she was right alongside me in a lot of that. She's done the junior achievement in the school district. She's mentored students, taught Sunday school. She has served on church council. So it's kind of just an all in the family thing. But clearly this is not, I didn't do anything super special to get this. It's just a matter of accumulation. And when you're in a community for almost 35 years, stuff really accumulates. Whether that's the Hudson cable I've been doing for 17 years or the boosters, which I did, you know, when my 30-year-old kids now were in T-ball, you know, and then just, you know, Rotary, of course, is another place where, you know, we have an opportunity to put service above self. So anyway, thank you for recognizing this, and I just want to thank Lynn for being so coy. I mean, we almost didn't make it on time because
he was quizzing me on the way back.
What
do you think I should wear to this thing?
Well,
I think you should wear exactly what's on your Jamie Johnson for judge.
Well,
because you're going to hand out those.
Well, we were just at the school board convention, which is a place I've been for 10 of the last 12 years because I missed the year my wife got in her accident. I missed the year of COVID, obviously. But we were down at the convention, and she said she needed to be at this chamber. She had an event that night. She didn't even say she was going to go to the chamber thing. But when I left my phone in the lobby of the hotel we were staying at in Milwaukee, we almost didn't make it back in time. So luckily we discovered it before we got on the interstate. Anyway, thank you again, everyone. But we have another recognition, and that is also well-earned, and that is Megan Rosowski has achieved level 1 for the Certificate of Achievement from Wisconsin Association of School Boards. This was actually awarded in October, and looking at the calendar, it's now February. Sorry, we didn't bring this to the last 3 meetings, but Megan, congratulations. It's actually one of those things where now that you've been to your second state convention, you've been to a national convention, you're probably already on your way to level 2, could be as early as this coming fall. The first couple levels come fast, and then it slows down after that. But anyway, thank you for getting so involved and, you know, becoming integral to our board's activities here. Now, we do have some members that want to speak. And so we're going to allow, since we have 3 speakers, I'm just going to take them in the order I received them and allow up to 3 minutes. Can somebody afford me the timer? All right, thanks, Rob. So first up would be Kathy Roberts, former teacher district, talking about the referendum. So.
I am talking about the referendum. I've always voted for them, even the last one I voted for. But this one, I think I'm real positive about this, but I do have a couple questions, and I was told by Tim that nobody will answer my questions, but I hope somebody writes them down and gets back to us, because I think they're important. And I am supporting this referendum partly because it's a 6-year limit, or it goes for 6 years, so I think that was a good thing. I want to know about 2 problems, however, and I am a member of this community for 58 years. I was not born and raised here, but I feel like I was because we've been here forever. And we used to live in North Hudson, and now we live in Hudson. So it is nice to have free parking downtown because I'm old. But anyway, so here's my 2 things that I want people in the community to know, and I don't know if people know this. Because how many years has it been since the state legislature put on a levy limit for schools? If anybody could tell me. I don't know what that is.
It's like 1994.
So, and I'm just saying from a personal experience, we had a small rebonding project that we were going to do, and I asked this man that came out and bid on it, what has changed since January 1st, and he said everything has gone up 6%. So if you think my little project has gone up 6%, what is this doing to the rest of this community? And I'm not worried about the taxes, because for $20 a year or $4 a year, or whatever it is, I mean, you just see people lined up for coffee that spend more than that in one stop. So my other question is, how many years has this levy limit gone on? And so that's what I really would think. I think it's important to let the community know. And the other thing is school vouchers. how many years has the school vouchers program been going on? Because I remember when I was teaching, we did not have it. So that's my other, I don't think people know about the voucher program. And that's taking away from my public school taxes. So those are my two questions. So I'm under my 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And I should have, and sometimes I read the full printed thing that we have laminated here as far as our board policy, but what you were told, Kathy, is correct, that we don't directly respond at these meetings, but that a district representative can follow up with you. And we can't obviously take specific action on anything raised here, but I know you were just making comments, good questions, and somebody will get back to you. So with that, we'll go to speaker number 2, who has actually 2 items. That's Scott Ellingson. He had budget cuts and yes committee, so.
And actually, the yes committee part I'm going to take off because we have a yes committee person here, which is
Okay.
going to be a far better speaker than I could ever be. So at the meeting last time, one of the topics you had was for potential budget cuts was the idea of cleaning rooms, classrooms every other day, saving money on custodial savings, that kind of thing. And the more I've thought about that, I mean, I get that in a way that sounds like almost an easy thing in a way. Oh, yeah, we'll just clean rooms every other day, and that's not a big deal and all that. Just, but then I thought, no, that is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And there's certainly what that really gets to, a lot of the budget cuts would get to certainly the loss of jobs and people that have those jobs. But then I wonder, okay, what about the rest of us, the teachers, the other custodians, other staff that are there? And so how would that exactly look like? What would that mean? Would the teachers pitch in kind of like they did during the pandemic and, clean desks a little bit, that kind of thing? Would the custodians just be stretched even more? Would you have the students help with that? I have a few 1 hour each every other day that might be good candidates to help clean up the floor since they caused some of that. But anyways, and I just thought, well, what corners would be cut? And, I think we already have a good amount of turnover with our custodians. I think we have some real retention challenges. So I just really think we need to consider that and the importance of, their morale and their retention, and just the importance of having clean rooms for our students. Hudson has high expectations for all of us, as they should. And I just think it's important that, I think the thing on the high school says, like, Hudson School is like nowhere else. Well, we don't want the nowhere else distinction to be about we clean our rooms every other day and people come in and all that. So I don't think that's what was actually meant. I hope it's not meant, but I just think please reflect on that a little bit more and know that we all deserve to have good, clean, beautiful schools that'll help a great learning environment for our students to do really well. So thank you so much. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you. And next up, we have Kristen Kessler. And she's from the, yes.
Thank you. Dr. Willett, board members, community members, and families. I'm a mom of 4, 3 current students at Holton and a future 2040 class of Holton, hopefully. But I'm here to talk about the referendum. Dr. Willett has provided us with great information on the state of finances in the schools, and it's very clear that the funding has not kept up with inflation. I think it's really important that we get this message out that if we don't pass this referendum, very difficult decisions are going to be made, and those are going to affect the quality of education in our schools. We looked at the community forum at some of those possible ways to cut and reduce spending, and many of them we didn't like as community members and family members. It's going to affect the quality of education. I think it's important that we get the message out that this isn't about 2 schools and a few families. This is about all of our schools, and it's going to affect all of us when we talk about moving boundaries, changing programming, affecting technology, athletics, teacher salaries and benefits. All of this is going to affect the quality of our schools. So when or actually, I think it was Jamie, at one of the recent meetings, you had said, we didn't have a strong yes sort of group with some of the last referendums. So we heard your call and we formed a group called Friends of Hudson Schools. We had our first active participation at the Hot Air Fair. We saw some of you there. And we're getting out there with pins and signs for yards. So we're hoping to reach out to more families. But we'd love for people to join with us. Board members, we're happy to have you help us on.
See any others that have turning cards, so we're going to move on to reports and turn over to Dr. Nick with construction update.
Yes. All right, thank you, Jamie. This lovely shot of some toilets hanging on the wall here. What you're seeing is remodeled bathrooms. I believe this is EP Rock Elementary School. And so you're seeing, if you've been in EP Rock, you'll notice that a lot of these things are definitely improvements. You start to see the classrooms, the carpeting has gone in, cabinetry's gone in. They're working on getting other things done. If you keep working your way through, some more toilets and bathroom upgrades. As we, the last time the bathrooms were upgraded was when the building was built. So these are kind of when you do these things, they're long time decisions, and so should be some really nice spaces for our kids. You can see the windows are starting to go in, so it's actually on the back side of the building, so that was an area that was previously infilled with EFS. Basically, it was like a styrofoam and stucco material, so that's part of the band of windows that's going to go around the front part of the building, and so you start to see the natural light that's coming in. You start to see, if you go down, you start to see some of the borrowed lights into the classrooms, into the hallways. In some of the rooms, you have floor to ceiling. In some rooms, it's you can see why they have to be up in the air, because the cubbies go below them, and so. But it's getting brighter by the day as the lights are going in, and the ceilings and the paint. Classroom sinks with the bubblers, which are the water fountains for kids, so they don't have to go out into the halls to fill water bottles, things along those lines. It's something we've had in the past. New cabinetry. And as you kind of work your way through, if you go down to North Hudson, a couple items on there just to talk through. You're starting to see some of the rooms that remodeled. This is a room that actually has a separate, I think it's a calming space that's in there as well. You can see we have some challenges if you go up a little bit. That unit in the corner, we have these units at the high school. They're called vertical unit ventilators. The ceilings are extremely low at North Hudson. And so it allows us to still have lots of fresh air coming in, lots of different things going in, but the units are in the corners of the classrooms as you go. If you keep going down, you can see in some of these spaces, the bathrooms, this is actually, I think, a utility space off of the addition. They're starting to get concrete poured and get that stuff worked in. The gym space, they're working on roof drains and trying to get that done. They're actually going to be pouring the gym floor later this week, so it's an exciting time. You can see there they're pouring concrete in the utility spaces, basically where some of our new systems are going to be. If you keep going down, the brick is getting around the building, so it doesn't look like a haystack anymore. So hopefully you can still hear me. The brick's going on the building. There's going to be some metal panel going on as well. And that's what you're seeing there. That still has to go on. And we'll keep working our way through, Tim. Yeah. Again, these are the new bathrooms going in across from the media center. You can see they got the floors poured. Keep going down. This is going to be the new entrance in and out of the building for recess. And so bricks on the walls are getting ready to get doors and overhangs and things like that in, so they're definitely moving along. This is part of a remodeled classroom, very early stages, getting all the rough-ins done. It hasn't been painted yet, but you can kind of get an appreciation for what they look like compared to what they're going to be like when they're done. Keep going down. And we go into the middle school. The middle school has really come a long way. You can see carpeting's going in. You can see the borrowed lights have been cut in, so we have more glass and passive supervision. This is a science lab. The VCT tile's been removed. It's now polished concrete floors, so we don't have to strip and wax every summer, which is a long-term savings for us with the labor and the materials related to that. You can start to see the house areas. This is actually an older picture because now all the carpet is in and all of the lockers are in. As of today, we just stopped over and keep going down. You can see the carpeting going in matches the carpet that we had in the other existing spaces as we worked our way through. And then you can see the bathrooms, new partitions, same wall tile. We basically try to keep everything simple. It's the same wall tile we have in the bathrooms at the high school. You're having them in all of the different bathrooms as we work our way through. There you can see some more pictures of lockers going in some of the islands. And then tile work, keep working your way through. Lots of toilets. We love taking pictures of toilets. These pictures come from our construction manager firm, so they love to take pictures of toilets, apparently. At the middle school, a lot of the work is being done in the house area, and then a lot of the work at the middle school is also on the mechanical system, so it's a lot of stuff that you don't see. So there's, as we continue to kind of work through this. But the projects right now are on schedule. We got delayed about a week and a half at EP Rock in the current phase. We were waiting on some different products that weren't in quite in time in the windows. And then at the middle school, we got delayed about a week and a half as we were waiting on lockers. The lockers were supposed to be here about the 5th of January, and they were going to be in storage, and they didn't show up until Thursday of last week. And so, some of the supply chain issues we're having. But the middle school, they're going to be moving into the middle school space on Monday, I believe, Friday, Monday. So we'll have that space open. People will be able to see it during conferences. And then EP Rock is going to be moving in the following Monday. I think it's Monday the 24th. And then North Hudson is actually going to be moving in probably right around the 2nd of March, I think, somewhere right around there. So 3rd of March. What questions do you have?
Mr. President, how are we doing for budget, Nick?
Budget-wise, we're sitting in a really good spot. I know Bonnie's working on putting those documents together. We'll have them at the work session. I think, Rob, you had asked about them. We're sitting in a good spot. We still plan on bringing it in on time and under budget. And so we're just not too many unforeseen things. But, because things are going a little bit better than we anticipated, we're able to get some additional carpeting done while they're there doing carpet and stuff like that. And we were able to actually, the ceilings in the bathroom, we actually raised them about 1.5 feet, which doesn't seem like much, but they were kind of like caves before. And so one of the challenges we can sometimes run into is people sticking stuff up inside the ceiling tiles when the ceilings are too low. And so getting those as high as possible is definitely helpful for us. So, but yeah, budgets are sitting pretty good. The big push is going to be this summer. I mean, there's probably going to be $20 to $25 million worth of work done this summer. I mean, it's a lot of work this summer. So.
Mr. President,
Yes, Kate.
so some community members have come to me and said, you have this referendum going on, but I see construction going on everywhere at the schools. How could you possibly need money when I see you spending all this money?
Yep.
So I know we're around it every day, but
Yep.
they're busy families and have a lot going on, so maybe you could just speak to that.
Absolutely. So the work being done on these buildings right now are the result of the referendum that passed in 2023. And so that was the spring, it was a construction referendum, so it can only be used on construction projects. And so we were very specific. We went to the voters and asked for this work to be done. It just took us about a year's worth of planning and design in order to get us to the point we're at now. The referendum that we're going to referendum on in April is the one we've already tried a couple times, and that's operational. So that is really our ongoing day-to-day expenses and bills, so not related to the construction projects. And so in school districts, we have very distinct pots of money, and the pot of money that this is coming from is the construction pot of money, and then we're asking for additional help in our regular operation day-to-day budget money, and that's what the referendum is coming up.
And
Great
just,
question.
Bob's got a comment, but just an offshoot of that is that on the construction referendum, we were authorized to purchase the bonds of 29 million and use 15 million of reserve that we had built up over years for capital projects. But that, even the interest from those bonds can't be used for operations. It has to be used for
It has to be used,
construction.
yep, yeah, everything tied to the construction has to be used into the construction projects, so, yep. So anything that, as we sold the bonds and then generated revenue we're sitting on the money as we were waiting for the projects to start, that revenue has to be pushed into the projects as well.
And I would just add that, what is our yearly maintenance budget of 1.8, is that right?
I think it's, somewhere around 1.8, 1.9.
So we run a pretty tight maintenance schedule over the year and over the years. So the reason for the capital referendum was to address these aging buildings that are still very solid and very serviceable, but to make those necessary improvements that we do not tax in advance to pay for without going to the voters.
Yes, absolutely.
Great question, Kate. Yep. Anything else on that? Otherwise, it's a good segue into referendum report, because we are talking about an operational referendum for April 1, 2025.
Absolutely. So, Tracy's done a great job putting together, this is kind of our one-page flyer that we hand out whenever we're at different events, parent meetings, different groups and things along those lines. It's also on our website. On the flyer, we took the feedback that we're hearing from people, like, what would you like to see on the flyer? What can we do differently? We're trying to listen to what people have to say. The Scan Me code is that QR code at the bottom. It's if people really want to dig into a lot more data than what's just on the flyer, they can absolutely do that on the website. But the big points we want to make sure we hit is, the annual financial impact of $4 per 100,000 or $20 for a $500,000 house. And we want to make sure that that's on there and that people understand that. There's a couple other points that we made sure that we added after we got feedback from folks. We do have a track record of strong financial responsibility. We have the second highest bond rating you can have in the state with a AA1 bond rating. There's only 2 districts that have a AAA rating. We've been trying to get to it, but there are things outside of our control to get to a AAA rating, and that is our sheer taxable valuation, just the size of the district. But there's only a handful of districts that actually have a AA1 rating, and so it speaks to the financial solvency of the district and what the board has done. We also, in our most recent audit, which you guys had the presentation, I believe it was in January, we had a clean opinion, no material defects in our audit, which is the highest level you can have. And then we maintain a healthy fund balance to ensure that we aren't doing short-term borrowing. And so that's important. A lot of times people wanted to know, what are we going to use these funds specifically for? Because a lot of the questions become, why can't you just put that on the ballot? Why can't you just say it's going to be for this thing? Or why can't you put, a lot of the things that are on here we're not able to put on the ballot. The ballot has very strict language and there's very strict requirements. When I looked, I think there's 91 school districts going to referendum in April. And of the districts that are going to operational referendum, which I think is somewhere in the 70s or 80s, almost every referendum question is identical. Obviously not the dollar amount, it's different for district, but it's because you have to ask it a very certain way in order for it to be considered a legally binding question. And so what we wanted to make sure we do is we put on here more specifics as to what we're going to spend the money on, and that is to try to maintain a lot of the programs that some of our speakers tonight talked about that we've looked at potential cuts to if we're not able to. And I think it's important for people to understand that we want to maintain our college and career readiness and career-ready curriculum, and that's everything from our AP classes to our welding academy, our new welding academy, and things along those lines, and our technical education classes and industrial certifications. We also have ASC certifications where we have kids leaving our buildings with credentials that they can go work at dealerships, and which is great. We want to maintain our elementary specials, so we'll be spending money on that, things like art, music, and physical education. We want to continue to maintain our class size guidelines to the best of our ability, maintain our extracurricular activities as we look at it, our math and reading intervention supports, we talked about that, specifically spending money on that. Recruiting, retaining high-quality staff, so that has to do with benefits and salaries and things along those lines, and maintaining our technology and our cybersecurity. Schools are becoming an ever-increasing threat. We're having ever-increasing threats to our schools as it relates to cybersecurity. Districts are getting nailed with ransomware. They're locking systems down and extorting money. We want to maintain our transportation guidelines, so the money would go to be able to do those things. And then the other piece is to maintain our operational budgets as far as our facility budgets and things like that. And so if there are other things people have questions about or wonder, they can always, reach out to the district. I know Tracy gets them at the connections at hudsonraiders.org, or they can always reach the superintendent's office, and we'll try our best to answer their questions. But just, that's kind of where we're at with the referendum update.
Mr. President,
Yes, Rob?
so this handout, postcard, what have you, does a nice job summarizing. It also talks a little bit about the reductions to our budget, and not everybody will have the opportunity to see this handout. Would you mind, in brief, covering where we've reduced our budget and how in progress on the property sales, please?
Yep, absolutely. And so, in the last 2 years, we've reduced our budget by about 1.9 million, and that's been everything from administrative positions to teaching positions, support staff positions, in order to make adjustments and cuts. If you look over the last 4 years, we've actually reduced our budget by over $3 million, about $3.5 million, and that it would be encompassing of those positions as well. We're also putting together and working on, it's going to be later in the agenda, another sets of cuts to present to the board here coming up in the next month or so, as we look for different reductions the best way that we can. As far as the two district properties, so this property is for sale. We've had some interest that has picked up on this property. We don't have an offer yet, but we have had interest in this property. So this property is listed. I think it's important to know, because we've had some people that have had questions, is the district adding on to the middle school in order to move to the middle school? And the answer is unequivocally no, we are not adding on to the middle school. I just actually heard that one today. We are moving into a space at the middle school that we have to convert from classroom space to office spaces. It is basically going to be a series of drywall walls, doors, ceilings, lights, and carpet. It's not anything that's going to be over the top fancy, but I'm sure it'll look nice, because when things are new, they tend to look nice when they're new. But it is just, we're doing the minimum we can do in order to move into those spaces. And so that's why when the property is sold, if it sells for 2.1 million, that's why the net is only about $500,000 to $700,000, because there's money that's associated with having to turn the classroom spaces into office spaces. And we are shrinking our footprint, so we're going from about a little over 12,000 square feet current to go down to about a little over 8,000 square feet. So we're trying to condense down, get into a smaller space, and be responsible that way. The UU property, we have an offer on the property. It's a contingent offer. We believe that sometime, hopefully in the next month or two, we're going to be able to be really close to being able to execute that offer and be done with that. That's about a $2.9 million, I believe somewhere around there was the price tag, 2.92, somewhere around there. So as soon as the contingency is getting it into the city of Hudson annexation. And so been working with the buyer quite a bit on that, trying to understand what they need from us and where they're at and things. And they believe like they are very, very close to being able to make that happen. So.
All right, couple things, Nick, you just mentioned about the money being used for conversion of classroom to office space to be able to move the district office from here to the middle school. Could you just confirm too that that's not coming from referendum money in 2023?
Yep, it's coming from the proceeds of the sale of this building, essentially. And just to give you an idea, I mean, we're being told if you were to build new square footage, it's about $400 to $450 a square foot. The renovation of this space is somewhere around $175 a square foot, 170. It's pretty, if you were to talk to people that are in the commercial renovation business, to be able to renovate space at that level is extremely low. It's, you know, we're doing everything we can to keep costs down. And so that's just important for people to know, because it's not over the top, but there has to be things that are done in order to make it
And I
usable
want
space.
to, I want to acknowledge the group that spoke without directly addressing their comments, but acknowledge that there is a vote yes referendum committee. I did see them down at the Torchlight Parade. And Nick, if you could, just for people who, you know, view these meetings, so that they know why the district can't be its own vote yes committee, and the difference between explaining the need and advocating.
Absolutely. So, as a school district, the board and the district has has an obligation that once it's been determined that a question is going to be asked to the community, we have an obligation to get information out, and we are to explain why it is that the district is asking for this money. And so, we don't tell people to vote yes. We don't tell people to vote no. We just say this is why the district's asking for the money. And the biggest reason is you know, not using public dollars to, public funds to
Campaign or advocate.
campaign or advertise on behalf of a ballot measure or an individual. And so that's why it's a very tight line to walk, because obviously the district is asking. So I think people imply what the expectation is, but we're not able to. And it doesn't mean that people that work for the district can't participate, or the board can't participate. They still have First Amendment rights. There's probably only about one person that they consider not having really First Amendment rights when it comes to the referendums, and that's my position, because the Attorney General has opined that I'm the superintendent 24/7, and so therefore, for me to advocate one way or another for a position, I'm always in the position of superintendent, and so I don't have the ability to advocate one way or another, which I think is kind of a little bit, seems like an infringement on First Amendment rights outside of work. But so I stay clear of it, but I am able to provide information, whether it be to vote yes groups, vote no groups, to any groups that want information related to our referendum. I can absolutely provide whatever information they need, or our staff can provide whatever information they need.
And that was going to be my final thing, was because the board just got a second email from a particular person that was asking about that. You know, what are the limits for advocating, and you know, what can be done on school grounds, so forth. But if people do have information, who should they contact, so that we're going through the right channels?
Yeah, if you have questions, or, you know, that's a great point. People ask, well, why don't you set up a vote yes or something like that at a hockey game, or at a basketball game, or at a concert? And we can set up an informational kiosk, which we do. We have informational kiosks set up, but we can't take a position on the referendum, because you guys do have a board policy that aligns with state law that says you won't allow the campaigning on school district property on behalf of a ballot measure or on behalf of a person, an individual. That's why we also don't allow people to pass out literature and things like that on property, because once you do it for one, you have to do it for all. You don't get to just say, well, because we agree with this group, we're going to go ahead and allow that, but because we don't agree with this group, we're not going to allow that. So it's kind of, once you open up that box, it's a tough one. And really, there's a difference between renting our facility for people to use, and because anybody, you know, basically anybody can rent our facility, but when you want to use our facility while we are using it and then advocate, that's where your board policy kicks in and says, no, you can't do that. So that doesn't prevent people from renting our facility that have different views. It just means that while school's in session, or while we're holding organized things, we have a policy that prevents certain things.
Right. Anything else?
Megan had something.
Mr. President,
Yes.
going back to what you mentioned
about the sale of the UU property. You said it's about 2.9 million. There's a lot of numbers being thrown around. I just wanted to note for folks that that's one-time money, and these shortfalls are structural and ongoing. So I think it sounds like it would plug the budget for next year, but that 2.9 million is only coming in one time, so.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, any other comments or points to make on this? Otherwise, yeah, we still have, well, what is it, 7 weeks from tomorrow to April 1st, so. All right, moving on, we go to the action portion of the agenda. First up is consent items, and I would entertain a motion with the language from expenditures.
Mr. President,
Yes, Rob?
I move approval of the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $3,173,346.28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and I believe we have a couple retirements, is that right?
So we have 2 retirements that are coming up on this agenda. So it's a little later than typical, but it's a little atypical retirement. So Chris Doherty is instructional coach at the high school, and she submitted her retirement in February to be effective at the end of the school year. She has 11 years of service in Hudson and other years of service outside of Hudson as well. Then we have Lori Opelt, who's a paraprofessional at the high school, and she has 23 years of service. So they're going to be included in our celebration in May.
Excellent. All right, any other questions on that? Otherwise, we'll move on now. Budget for 25-26 budgeting discussion. Nick?
So, the budgeting discussion is just purely kind of a, Jamie, you asked me to put this on the agenda, kind of recap some of the parameters that you gave us during the work session on the, what was it, the 24th, I believe, or
January 24th.
24th or 27th. And so, we're in the process of working through trying to find some additional reductions to the budget. As you know, our projected deficits for next year are somewhere around 2.6 million, 2.5 million. In the direction I think we got from the board at the work session was to try to look anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million in reductions, regardless of kind of where we're sitting referendum-wise. And so our goal is that by the February work session, which would be 2 weeks from today, is that we would have a first kind of run with the board to say, hey, here's where we think we are, or some of the proposed reductions that we're working on. I can tell you right now, none of which are planned to be layoffs per se. I think almost all of it's going to be handled through attrition. So,
All right. And I think I wanted to put this on the agenda just so the public knows that while there is a referendum that's, going to be discussed over the next 7 weeks, we are getting an early start on budgeting and looking at proposed cuts. It's a little unprecedented to be starting at the January work session, but we haven't had to make cuts this large and that I can ever remember. So, anybody else have anything to add to that? Otherwise, we will be discussing cuts for several of the next coming work sessions, regardless of the outcome of the April 1 referendum. All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to first reading of Board Policy 100 series updates. Andrea?
Okay, so as we talked about at the board work session, these are just our cyclical review of policies, and so we're back at the 100 series, and really looking at a lot of procedural or non-substantive cleanup for the most part. However, we had some modifications that we're recommending for policy 111 in terms of goals, providing a little bit more flexibility to reflect the fact that we don't always get data consistent with our old policy and our goal setting structure. And so this just gives a little bit more flexibility in that regard. And then also policy 133 is the filling board vacancies. Having done it, you guys did it last year. We had conversation about that, and I did add the language in there. If the board chooses to make an appointment recommendation prior to the effective date of the vacancy, the departing board member should not vote on such recommendations. That was my understanding, what you guys asked me to do. So that is now integrated in this recommendation.
All right. Well, with that, we've had quite a bit of discussion, but you mentioned the small substantive changes we've made, but the big one had to do with revising Nick's title from district administrator to superintendent, uniformity there. So that's recurring in a lot of these 56 pages of policy. Is there a motion to approve for first reading?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Megan, second by Molly. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. This will be back on the agenda next month for a second reading. Next up is certified staff layoff language. That's also Andrea. And again, this is something we discussed at the last work session.
Yes, and this is a more substantive change to our current language, which is in our 24-25 Certified Staff Handbook. We've had, as you said, a lot of discussion regarding reductions over the last 6 months to a couple years. And every time we start talking about potential reductions, we want to look and reflect on layoff language such as this. And we're focused on the certified staff language right now as we're going into the staffing process for our certified staff. Actually starting tomorrow. So this is a modification to reflect the fact that in the past it previously identified or emphasized building determination more so than we should, because there's some areas where we can look more K-12 with our positions when we look at layoffs, and that's specifically identified in this language. And there's also areas where we, at the elementary level, one elementary shouldn't be viewed differently than another elementary. All of our first grade teachers, or all of our really 4K5 teachers, for the most part, have licensure that can translate. So we wanted to be reflective of the fact that we don't want one building to feel targeted when that was never the intent, and that has not been our practice as we look at any reductions that have occurred previously. So really using this as an opportunity to make some modifications. As Nick said, it doesn't look like we have significant layoffs, especially given the number of retirements that we have going into this year, but we're just starting that process. But I think it's important that we start making these changes now, and then also communicate it with our staff. We did get feedback from both our lead crew as well as our TAC committee prior to developing this recommendation.
All right, and I want to point out, this is not a change in any policy or board policy per se. The agenda item just said certified staff layoff language, but specific to the certified staff handbook. And it is a bit unusual to change it mid-year. Usually we make changes prior to the beginning of a school year, but we wanted the timing on this because of the timing of layoffs, right?
Exactly, and we have done it a few other times, like COVID. We did a significant overhaul of our support staff layoff language and added furlough language. When it comes up or we have a new rule that comes into place, we try to do it as quickly as possible. But yeah, typically we don't. But that also goes to the necessity of communicating it out, which also is dictated in our handbook, that we'll be sharing this information with our certified staff members so that they can also understand that this is a change. And we've been working with the union as well so that they are aware.
Sure. And I think for our, there's some people out in the public that don't follow closely, but they hear the word tenure spoken kind of in terms of higher education and so forth. But maybe just briefly touching on the fact that we don't have that, but rather our layoffs are pretty much, this is common sense language kind of putting in place.
I would say the extent that we have any kind of real tenure, it's more probationary period, right? The first three years of employment in the district is a probationary period. We do prioritize layoffs in that group first. And so after that, then yeah, years of service in the Hudson School District is the last of the 4 criteria to be utilized. Before that, it's any kind of suspension, performance improvement plan, specialized expertise training, and then we get years of Hudson experience. But again, those first 3 years we really use as a potential opportunity to not have to impact our non-probationary staff if we can.
Okay, thank you. But again, it's the same recommended changes that we discussed at the work session.
Yes, I did not make any changes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommended changes?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve the recommended changes to the certified staff member reduction layoff policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Rob?
just for my education, I don't have my cheaters on. It says in this blue paragraph that's underscored, for purposes of this identification process, the district shall typically consider the following positions to be 4K-12, special education teachers, so on. Is this an exhaustive list of all of those positions that are 4K-12, or is there something that's not included here for some reason?
We believe that's an exhaustive list, and it's really dictated by DPI licensure. And so there may be some others that have broader licensure, but at the same time, we've identified these specific positions as the only ones we'd be looking at as 4K-12.
Thank you.
And again, certified staff is kind of a definition to be consistent with what DPI considers certified, correct? Yes. All right. Again, we have the motion, the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Next up, Tracy on the 25-26 school age care fees.
Yes, so this document comes to the board annually for your review and approval. Good news, the school age care program is projected to end this school year with a positive balance. So that's what so then when we look to set the fees for next year, we're looking at inflation, keeping around that 2%, and also looking at what our comps are in the area as far as daycare and other childcare programs. And so what's being recommended here fits within those comps and keeps our costs reasonable for our families. We also provide our families with who receive free and reduced or qualify for free or reduced meals, an additional reduced rate so that we can make sure we're providing this service to all families who need it.
All right. Yes, Bob?
Just a question, is there any stresses to the system out there with other providers that you're aware of? Any recent closures or any things that would add to?
Greater need on need of service, you
Yes.
mean? Not anything that stands out as far as, I mean, our biggest stressor is staffing and finding folks to staff our summertime and school year. But I know we had one center close this year, but I've heard that there's potential for others coming in to replace that one. So I don't anticipate any huge change in the numbers that we will see on our end.
Okay, thank you.
And Tracy, just to be clear, it says this increase will maintain a positive school age care balance, keep costs reasonable, and then it says families who qualify for free or reduced meals receive a 50% reduced rate. So even with families utilizing that reduced rate, we still have a positive balance.
Correct.
All right. And so nothing about these fee increases is going to change the fact that we still honor a reduction for those families that qualify.
Correct.
All right. All right.
Mr. President?
Yes, Megan.
I just want to say that the school age care and the wrap care are great, and the summer care. And it's amazing to me that our district is able to provide this to all the families who want it. In other school districts, I know people have to like take the day off or block the time off on their calendar and hop on at noon and hit refresh to try and register, and it fills up that day. So the fact that the district works so hard to find the staff, and I don't know, does anyone get turned away pre-school registration before the school year starts?
No. We have, I mean, the only hold may be if we have a child who needs specialized care. So that would be a case where we're looking for the specific staff to work with a child. So, but no, for the most part, everybody gets in. I know there's some, because right now 4K in kindergarten registration is happening, and people stress out right now wanting to make sure that they get into 4K wrap care. And this past year, we were able to provide wrap care for every child that needed it.
It's amazing. So thank you. I just, as a parent, as a board member, thank you for all that you do in this area.
Any further general questions? Otherwise, I entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
Mr. President,
Yes, Kate.
I move to approve the 25-26 school age care fees.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve the recommended changes to fees. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Now, we are to the most controversial agenda item tonight. Dave, first reading on teaching and learning policies.
Yeah,
That
so
was
we have-
tongue-in-cheek. You were just, last.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that was tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, these are not controversial. So we have 3 policies. They are new policies. 2 are statutorily driven, 1 driven by some new information that we wanted to make some changes to make sure we're maximizing benefit for our students. We went into these in some detail at the last work session, so just as a review, the Act 20 student promotion policy, it's related to Act 20 legislation that changed the way we approach reading instruction in the state of Wisconsin to make sure that it's more aligned to the science of reading, and within that law, there's some mechanisms that would allow a school to retain a child if they aren't making adequate progress on their personalized reading plans. This is the policy that would lay out what we would do if we were to do that, but more importantly, the safeguards against doing that without considering all the factors that are critically important to consider when you make a decision as significant as retaining a student. The next one is Title I family engagement. That also is statutorily driven. This deals with this one really doesn't change our practice. This just codifies our practice that we already have in place related to engaging families of students that receive services through our Title I funding. The vast majority of that funding is related to early childhood and early elementary reading. It supports our reading intervention programs and many of the different things we have in place that support literacy. It's critically important that we engage all families, but specifically families that are working with students that require something additional or beyond the core, and that's what this policy lays out. The third one is related to weighted grades. We had quite a conversation about this one. We found out that although post-secondary institutions typically do not consider weighted grades for acceptance in their institution, they do, several do consider weighted grades when determining merit scholarships, and we didn't want to create a situation where any of our students from Hudson were at a disadvantage when it comes to financing their post-secondary plans, because as we all know, they're very expensive. So anything we can do to maximize the benefit to our students, we think is important, and this policy lays out our plan to do just that.
Very good. So is your preference to get one motion for all 3 policy changes?
One motion would be fine, if that's what you choose.
All right. Again, these were discussed, like you said, at length at the work session, but I will entertain motion or motions.
I make a motion to approve the first reading of the teaching and learning policies.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion regarding this first reading of teaching and learning policies?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
So back, once upon a time, when we went to the block schedule, we opted at, I think, roughly the same time to be done with the Laude system.
That's when we started the lottery system.
Well, got away from this.
Weighted
This for
grades.
the weighted grades.
Yes.
Thank you. I stand corrected. And so my understanding is we knew then the impact from a merit scholarship standpoint then, but we opted to continue to move forward. And I understand talking to Kristen Hadfield, she talked to you back then. And so why the change now?
Sure. So yes, we did have conversations. That was one institution, but specifics weren't provided as far as how they would determine the merit scholarships. We've now found several other institutions, so it's not just one, it's several. That's the primary reason we made the change, or recommended the change.
Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion items? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and this will be up for second reading approval. Again, these are changes or new policies that were taken because of need, right, basically? So we will address those next month for the second reading. Now I'll entertain a motion. We've got two bases upon which to go into closed session. I assume that we will go to the conference room to do that? All right. Well, regardless of where it will happen, it's not going to happen in front of the public because that's why we have the closed session rules. So anyway, I will entertain a motion that's going to require a roll call vote. So please read both grounds.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent F, to consider disciplinary data related to student expulsions, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G, to confer with legal counsel concerning strategy to be adopted by the board with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Does not allow for a discussion. And it's a roll call vote. Bauman. Aye. Brown.
Aye.
Garza. Aye. Powers. Robson.
Aye.
Rozowski. Aye. Johnson, aye. It's unanimous. We are going to go into closed session, and from there, we will adjourn the meeting without coming back into open session. Thank you for coming.